Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living. Bob, it's really good to see you. Will you be doing the music today? It's great to see you, Crystal. That's right. See? You have to recognize everybody. You can't just go with one person. Well, I'm glad that you are here today. Can you hear me okay? What? Yeah. Of course, we have practitioners in our service, and they're anchoring and holding us in prayer. Right, Ruth? Yes?
And so our reading today is by Forrest Church from his book, Valley of the Shadow. He says, "There are so many instances in our daily lives when fear stands in the way of our potential to love. How many ways we find to armor and protect ourselves. We sense the risks, of course, that the main reason we act in the ways we do. Every time we open ourselves up, every time we share ourselves with another, every time we commit ourselves to a cause or a task that awaits our doing, we risk much. We risk disappointment, we risk failure, we risk being rebuffed or being embarrassed or being inadequate. And beyond these things, we risk the enormous pain of loss."
Well, our topic is, so what's the topic? There's nothing to fear. It's a good topic. Good topic. How many of you have been afraid this past week? Anybody? Fantastic. You're here exactly at the right time. Gallup 2017 survey on fear. These are the big ones, and I'm starting moving more intense as we go. The future. Being alone. Crime, violence, heights, war, failure, death, spiders, and terrorist attacks. Now, other things were mentioned, things like public speaking, dentist. We have a dentist here, I apologize. And just pain in general, cancer. Fear is the epicenter of most of our unhappiness. We may call it something else, but fear is usually at the heart when we are not feeling good about ourselves. It's why people stay in jobs that they hate. It's why people live life without love. It's why people don't go back to school. It's why people don't start their own business. And it's why people sometimes will not give a toast at a wedding. Fear. And just about everything you want and desire in your life is on the other side of fear. Fear has the power to rob you of most things that you would value and most things that you would love. Fear gets in our way. Someone said this week that fear is almost like being in hell. Now, I'm not sure what being in hell is like, but I would tend to agree. Fear can cause a lot of pain. And if we're operating below our spiritual awareness, fear can be like a cloaked enemy that sneaks up beside you and whispers in your ear and into your mind and into your body and even into your soul. And so fear limits a lot of the things that we might do. So let me ask you, and I may ask you more than once, but what are you afraid of? And you may think spiders, snakes, or something, but sometimes we're afraid of things that are even deeper than just objects. Sometimes fear keeps us in bed. Sometimes fear keeps us stuck in situations that we really don't want to be in. All the religions talk about fear. It's said that in the Bible, the most given commandment is fear not. And I haven't counted that, but that may well be true. Now you may say, well, fear is sort of a natural thing. It happens to everybody. Anyone that has a normal range of emotion probably is going to be afraid at one time or the other. And it really does deal with our incarnational experience. Because we're in these physical bodies, we have fear. Because we have a brain, we have fear. Because it's produced in a very physical kind of way. Late at night, You're sitting on the couch, you're watching television, but it's pretty quiet. No one's in the house except you. Then all of a sudden, the door slams against the door frame. It's a loud noise. You jump off of the couch almost, and it fills you with dread. It feels like a threat. It feels like fear. Your heart is pounding. Your breathing has changed. Your mouth is dry, and there's a rush of hormones into your bloodstream to give you energy, and all of that happens just like that. And then you realize storm's coming, wind's blowing. The wind just blew the door, and so there's no threat, but it still takes you a little time to recover from that. And the reason is because fear is a very physical response of your body based on what's taking place in your brain. You know, your brain, like the person next to you, is very complex. There's 100 billion nerve cells. There's lots of communication takes place. And there's probably dozens of areas of your brain involved when fear takes place. So it's not just one little area, but it's lots of lights, lots of communication taking place inside the brain. You know, we could look at the different areas of the brain, and there's one area that's kind of taking the signals in and then sending those signals out. There's another area that's evaluating, is there a threat in this? There's another part of your brain that's pulling at the same time up memories to see, do I remember anything like this in the past? And then the body is sending out signals either to fight or flight or freeze because of the fear. And so all of that is just talking about physical stuff. You know, sometimes we think, usually when I'm doing a talk, whatever the topic is, the week prior to that, I experience whatever the topic is. So if you can keep that in mind. So, you know, if I'm talking about, well, I'm not going to go into it. So this week I've thought a lot about fear. And sometimes I think we believe that fear, if we had a seminar on how to get rid of fear once and for all, a lot of us would come to that seminar. We have the idea that fear is a good thing to annihilate. But I'm going to suggest maybe fear is not really an enemy. Maybe fear could be a good friend. Without fear, you probably would not be here, because your ancestors would have been eaten a long time ago if they didn't have fear. And so we still have that same mechanism that's been developed and honed in our lives for a long time. It changes what you call something. If you call fear an enemy, you begin to relate to it as an enemy, and you experience exactly that. If you called it a friend, your evaluation of it would change, and you would see it in a very different way, and your experience would be different. And so that's one of the keys, is to how you name something, what you call something. But it is a natural kind of emotion. You may remember Franklin Roosevelt saying, the only thing to fear is fear itself. Eleanor Roosevelt said this: you gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. And you're able to say to yourself, I've lived through this, and I'll be able to live through whatever else may come. And then she said, you must do the thing you think you cannot do. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. Emerson said, he has not learned the lesson of life who does not every day surmount a fear. George Martin said that fear cuts us like a sword. And so I'm suggesting sometimes it will do that. Sometimes it will cause pain. But instead of trying to annihilate it, I'm going to suggest in some way, maybe even today over the next few minutes, we can develop some idea about how to deal with it in a different way. A psychologist said being afraid is not a choice. It's automatic. If there's a threat that's fed into our minds, then we become afraid. Being afraid is not a choice, but what we do with it is an absolute choice. Now, some people like to be scared. How many of you enjoy roller coasters? A few. Yeah. That's why people go to scary movies, and I'm sure some of you go to scary movies as well. So scary movies and such, and so sometimes people like to be scared. It may be sexual in nature. And you're wondering, what does that mean? Well, this week in doing the research for the fear, I came across several articles that said the fear response mimics sexual arousal. And of course, that was interesting. So I did read the studies. And the studies concluded basically that fear encourages sexual attraction. One quick study I'll just share with you. There are several, but they had 33 men on this side, 33 on this side, so it's a total of 66 men. And they had on one occasion, they had a really shaky bridge that was about 250 feet up. And it's really shaky. I mean, it was shaking all over, and you could see the water down below through little holes in the bridge, and so it was scary. And so they had those men walk across the shaky bridge, 33 men. And then they had another bridge going across the same height, but this time very solid, very stable. Nothing scary about this one. 33 men go across that one. At the end of the bridge, they have a very attractive young woman. And the young woman says, thank you for being part of our study. If you have any questions about this or need to talk to me, here's my card. So the men who walked across the stable bridge, 2 of them called her and just asked some silly questions about the study. The men who walked across the shaky bridge, 11 called her, and 9 of them asked her for a date. So see, and they did some other studies too, but all of that is very interesting. Sometimes I work with folks who are wanting to find relationships, and we always talk about what dating venues you would want to try. And after that study, I'm going to suggest a haunted house. That could work out really well for you. Now, and then as I thought about fear, and I thought a little deeper than that, I thought, I like bugs. Mark, I mean, we love bugs. How many times have we discussed bugs? Several times. Several times. So we enjoy the bugs together. A roach is okay. I don't mind a nice roach. Bees are nice. Spiders. Now, spiders are not really bugs. They eat bugs. And so I have great admiration for spiders. I removed one from our shower just last night after Mary Pat screamed, I think, 4 or 5 times. Boy, that reminds me. The one thing I really don't like, I don't like silverfish. Silverfish. When I was a little boy, I accidentally somehow fell into the basement into a family of silverfish. And since that moment, excuse me a moment, since that moment, I've been a little scared of them. Silverfish live, Ruth, 6, 7, 8 years. I mean, that is a long-living bug. Roaches, couple years. Spiders, couple years. A fly lives just a month after it grows up. Silverfish, 6, 7, 8 years. And as they're living those years, they get longer. So if you ever see one going by and it's really long, you can think, well, that's probably 6, 7 years old. And so I'm confessing to you right up front, I'm a little scared of those. Now, if I see one walking across the floor, I'm not going to start crying. But if I thought one was in bed with me, I would be jumping out of that bed quick. But enough about me. How about you? What are you afraid of? If you had to make a list, if you made a list of 1, 2, 3 things, what are you really afraid of? What would really just stop you in your tracks? Some people would say public speaking, car accidents, enclosed spaces. Indiana Jones was afraid of snakes. Maybe you're afraid of a snake, but sometimes things are so scary they just stop us. And we may have a beautiful dream we want to pursue, but we don't do it. Now, even though I'm afraid of silverfish, they don't affect my everyday decisions. They don't constrict me in such a way where I can't really live my life because I'm thinking about silverfish all the time. They don't do that, but sometimes fear can do that to us. And so, have you ever found yourself making decisions, going places, talking with some people, not going places, not talking to certain people, living your life based on a fear? And over time, that can easily happen. There's the iconic image of Jesus in the boat. Storm is raging. He says, "Peace, be still." His disciples are in the boat and they're all shaky. He says, "What's up with you guys? You have such fear. Why don't instead you have faith?" And faith and fear are opposites. The opposite of faith is not disbelief, it's fear. And the reason that's interesting to me is because they run on the same track, faith and fear, meaning that they both are created by us. They are both created from the world of the invisible. Faith means you're sure of something, but you can't see it. Fear often means I'm sure of something, but I can't quite see it. They're just on one end of one is on one end of the continuum, and one end is on the other. So they contrast one another. And so you want to think about what calls the shots for you. What calls the shots? And if you think of fear as an enemy, you give tremendous power to it. And it may well be in charge of you. But just renaming it can change it absolutely into something else. And so if you're out walking at night, it's about 3 a.m, and you see this shadowy figure approaching you, and as you get closer, you recognize it's fear personified. I'm going to suggest, instead of running the other way, instead of making the sign of the cross, or whatever you might do, instead of that, just walk up and say, "Hey." You can say, "Hey, how you doing?" And then you could even shake its hand, because you don't have to be afraid, because fear, after all, is not really the enemy. Fear is intent on protecting you. Now that's a different image. That's a different kind of picture. And it's been protecting the human race for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The deal is, though, you must be in charge. You don't want to surrender your leadership to fear, but you don't have to run from fear. That makes a big difference. But you've got to remember that fear is going to talk to you, and fear is going to ask you questions. I want to tell you some of the questions it will ask you. It will say, "You're about to do this or that. Are you sure you're good enough to do that? Are you sure that you're good enough to do that job? And what if you're not strong enough to handle this situation?" Those are the questions of fear. Now, fear is not trying to insult you, I promise you. Fear is not trying to intimidate you. Fear is not trying to make you feel inferior, because you can't feel inferior unless you choose that. Fear is wanting you to say, "Hey, I got this thing. I'm not a little boy or little girl anymore. I'm all grown up. And I can think, and I can reason, and I've thought about this, and I've made a decision. This is my path. This is what I'm going to do. And so I appreciate those questions. But I've got it." And so you can relax and know that everything's okay. And that will make all the difference in the world. But instead, if you say, "Oh my God, fear's saying maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not," and if you fall into doubt, then it means you surrender your leadership. So you must not surrender your leadership to fear. Fear didn't come to you to make you surrender your leadership. Fear just wants to make sure you're okay. Fear's a friend. And if you think of it that way, it makes all the difference in the world. And so I always like to give you points. Let me give you a few points. number one, you want to be aware. So you want to develop your awareness and be aware of what you're feeling. So when fear comes to you, you want to flip it over and look underneath. For me, if I'm experiencing fear, I often have pictures in my head. Sometimes we run from those pictures. We think, oh my God, I don't want to think about it. But instead, I want you to go in and put it up on a movie screen inside your head and enjoy the film. Watch it. Watch it with interest. Invite fear in for dinner. Serve fear some wine. Just have some fun. Enjoy looking at what the fear display is taking place inside your mind, because you want to know. They say curiosity killed the cat. Curiosity is not going to kill you. Curiosity is going to save you. It's going to lift you right out of it, and you can use fear as one of your best friends. It changes everything. Changes reality, absolutely. So you want to investigate exactly what's taking place. And the second thing you want to do, and Michael would agree with this, you want to breathe. You want to breathe. And I know you've heard that, and you may even discount it and say, breathe. I'm breathing right now. You don't need to tell me that. But when our breathing becomes shallow, it's a signal to our incarnational body and to our brain that says, uh-oh, we could be in trouble. And so then the fear begins to rise. And likewise, if we begin to control our breathing in a certain way, it's going to decrease the fear, and it really does work. Shallow breathing is a trigger to intensify the fear that you feel, and it's a very physical thing. Fear is a very physical thing that's taking place. And so what you want to do is breathe out longer than you breathe in. And there's lots of different approaches, and the one that I've read that I like and I've used is called the 7-11 technique. And so as you breathe in, you do a quick count of 7. You don't have to do it out loud, you do it in your head. And then as you breathe out, you do 11, a quick count of 11, and you do that for a couple minutes, and your fear actually changes. And you can use it to radically change how you feel about what's happening around you. Is that practical? You know, you may think, well, I'm breathing, but you want to try that. You want to try it because it really does make a difference. It really does dissipate the fear that you might be feeling. Now, I can hear someone saying, I think they're sitting right, well, I won't tell you where they're sitting, but I can hear them thinking this. They're thinking, wow, those are 2 great ideas, Bill. That's fantastic. But when I get scared, I don't remember a thing. I'm not going to remember to breathe. I'm not going to remember to shake its hand. I'm not going to remember anything. I'm just going to be thinking, man, am I in trouble? And so, number 3, I'm going to suggest that you practice. Spiritual practice, that's what we call it. Spiritual practice is really, really important. And so you want to practice dealing with those kinds of emotions, and it's not really that hard to do. What you want to do is ritualize peace. You want to ritualize courage. You want to ritualize a way to deal with that emotion when it begins to pop up. In the olden days in Kentucky, we would have a pump for the water, and I would put my hand on the pump and I'd begin to pump, and what would happen? Nothing. The water wouldn't come out. And so I would reach over at the water that's been saved and pour that into the pump and get rid of the air, so then I can pump it and the water will begin to come out. It's called what? Priming the pump. And so that's what you want to do, because either we're priming fear or priming courage. And we do that all the time. So we want to prime the pump. If we're going to prime it for fear, I'll tell you how to do it. I'll give you an example. Suppose I'm going to have surgery next Friday. Not sure what the outcome is going to be exactly. So as I think about it, and I'm just sitting on the couch, you know, watching whatever, and I think, yeah, I wonder what that's going to be like. I wonder how if they're going to put me to sleep. I wonder what this is going to feel like. And then I become aware that my palms are sweaty. And I'm just sitting there thinking about it. I wouldn't say I'm worrying about it. I'm just thinking. And I noticed, that guy said, you want to have some deep breathing, and I realize my breathing is really shallow right now. And so what I'm doing is priming fear. And that means I'm going to continue to do that all week. And then when I'm heading there on Friday, I'm going to really feel stressed. And I'm going to think, man, am I stressed? But I'm going to be stressed, and I'm going to be afraid, not just because of that event, but because I've been priming it for a long time. So I want you to do the opposite of that. So when you think of that surgery, I want you to be aware of your breathing at the same time. And I want you to practice the 7-11 kind of breathing. Practice that. It's a spiritual practice. And so deliberately do it. And you're sitting there thinking about something you feel some anxiety about that's coming up. And as you do that, you practice this breathing, and you'll find you'll begin to feel better. And then when you get to the outcome, it's going to be much easier. Does that make sense to you? See, that really will work. The trick is, all of you know so many wonderful tools, but you may not use them. And so you want to actually practice that. Put it into practice. It can make a big difference. I think I've given you 3 ideas. I think I'm going to give you 5, but let me give you number 4. Number 4 is this. One thing that throws me is I have found that, and I'm going to be real personal now, I live often outside of the moment. See, I grew up in an alcoholic home. I never knew exactly what was going to happen. It's hard to live in the moment when you're not sure what's going to happen an hour from now or the next day. So I learned as a little boy to anticipate. And when I anticipate, I'm no longer in this moment. I'm somewhere else. When we're somewhere else, anticipating, most of the time we create negative emotions. We create fear, and our body gets very tense because your body has been developed to live in this now moment. We say time is precious. Time is an illusion. What's precious is now, this moment. And so anticipation can get us in trouble. Carly Simon herself said, we can never know about the days to come, but we think about them anyway. Anticipation is making me late, is making me wait. Anticipation. And so you want to become very aware of where you are living. Are you in the past? Are you in the future, anticipating? Or are you in this moment? And you want to bring yourself back to this moment. And you can bring yourself back to this moment in lots and lots of different ways. One is breathing. One could be, you might rub your arm and you do it consciously. And as you do it, you're thinking, okay, in this moment I'm feeling this sensation. Lots of ways to do it, but just being aware of it. Because most of the time, if you're feeling fear, you're somewhere else. You're sitting in the airplane seat and your palms are sweaty and you're feeling lots of fear, but everything's cool. And so obviously you're anticipating something. You think right now there's no storm, but you're anticipating something because the news said it's 10 miles away. And so again, anticipation. Anticipation is sometimes can be really sweet, but sometimes it can cause a tremendous amount of pain. Let me show you how to anticipate. You're sitting down and you're having a pretty good time. You're not thinking at all about a silverfish. I mean, you're just sitting there thinking. And then you ask yourself, I wonder if I'm going to lose this job. And you begin to anticipate. I wonder how the biopsy will come out. I had one of those not too long ago. And I wondered about it. I wonder how that will work out. I wonder if my baby is going to be healthy. And you begin to anticipate. You pick up a little flower and you say, she loves me, she loves me not. She loves me, she loves me not. Oh no, there's 2 left. She loves me, oh no. And then we anticipate. You know, I wonder what's going to happen to the political climate a year from now or tomorrow. What's going to happen next week? What's going to happen next year? And what happens? You're going to find sweet, 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 sweet peace in this now moment. But likely you're going to find hell in anticipation. It can just rip your joy away, and it will create fear and turn fear absolutely into a mountain. And so the now moment is where you want to be. You can read books about it. Tolle wrote the book about the power of now, and you can look at it however you like, but you're wanting to live in this now moment because this now moment is pretty cool. Right now, you're okay, right? And so you take a breath and everything's all right. You know, and it's all in your head. And I'm not insulting you because it's all in my head too. This whole thing is in your head and my head. Your brain is there saying, I'm ready. I'll create whatever you need. I can create chemicals in your body to make you feel great or to make you feel not so good. I'm waiting. And so our mind just comes up with ideas and we insert those and then it creates these physical things. It's just a natural thing. But the thing that's really in charge of it is you. You're in charge of it. And so you can choose where you're going to really put the energy. And if you put the energy somewhere that's hurting, you can be aware of that and do something about it. You are eternal. You live forever. The universe moves at your command. Life is really, really good when you're in this now moment. And so the now moment is absolutely where you want to be. See, I think I had one major one. Let me mention a little trick. I don't know if you like tricks. Bob? Tricks. Here's a trick. And this isn't a heavy duty kind of teaching. It's just a trick. But try it. One way to change your experience is by the name you put on it. We know that. Another way you can do it is with numbers. Numbers. And so imagine you have an emotional brain and a mental brain. When you're really scared, you're in the emotional brain. If you could ask yourself a question that would pull you out of the emotional brain into the mental brain, you'll begin to dilute that emotion. Simple. And you can do it as easily as this. Man, am I scared. I feel a lot of fear. I wonder, on a scale 1 to 10, where is my fear right now? And you know what just happened? You're pulled into the mental brain. I wonder if I'm a 7. Wonder if I'm a 5. Maybe I'm a 2. And just asking that will begin to shift just a bit. You see, it's sort of just a little trick, but it really does make a difference because it's almost like placing a fence around the fear. And you can pull back and look at it and evaluate it. And so as you do that, you're separating from it. You realize, I'm not really the fear. I'm just sort of watching it. It is a powerful thing. And the final thing I'm going to suggest you can do is this. You can do it, I could do. Get yourself a dream. Get yourself something you're passionate about. Because if I have a dream that's here and fear is here, if I can raise the dream, guess what happens over here? It moves down. And so as fear rises, your dream will shrink. But if you can take control of your dream and put your attention there, because whatever you put your attention on is going to grow, put your attention on the dream, then fear will begin to shrink. It will begin to go down. So the way you get rid of fear is by having a big dream. And if you feel like you're stuck, begin to water the seed of that dream. It makes all the difference in the world. A dream. A lot of people who have done magnificent things, they didn't do it because they weren't afraid. They did it because their dream was so big. Gives me a chill or two because passion changes everything. A dream changes everything. A dream blows the lid off of your imagination. And so as you remember, all things are possible. All things are possible. I have a dream implanted in me, and this is possible. It could happen. the fear absolutely will begin to melt away. Somebody said, I think it was me, but somebody said, when you stand up and dream, fear will sit down. And I like that phrasing. And so your life is going to be a big pile of fear, or it's going to be an adventure. And you get to choose which one. I get to choose which one. And your brain is just there waiting for you to give the input. Take just 5 seconds and think about fear and immerse yourself in it. You got it? And now just pull yourself out, because see, you're above all of that. You're divinity. You're above it all. So you just rise above the fear now. And now over here is adventure. So now immerse yourself in the adventure. And as you do it, take a nice deep breath. See, it feels good. And you can absolutely feel the difference. And so Buddha was right. It all deals with our thoughts. It all deals with where we're placing our attention on our thoughts. I read a story this week about a monk, and the monk was living inside of a cave. I close with this story. Living inside of a monk, not living inside of a monk. That's not right. Almost feel like a silverfish there. So the monk is living inside of a cave. He's isolated, and he developed a magnificent practice of meditation and focus. He was also an artist, and so he developed the ability to paint amazing pictures. And he painted on the cave wall. And one day he spent quite a long time painting, the story goes, a ferocious tiger on the wall. And he worked all day into the night, fell asleep, woke up, saw the tiger that seemed so real, had a heart attack, and died. It seemed so real. It seems so solid. And so in your mind, you have a cave. And you paint things on that wall. And sometimes they seem so real. And they seem so solid. But I hope that you recognize the truth that as the artist, you decide what you're going to put up there and what you're going to concentrate on. Nobody else is going to paint on your cave wall. You do it. And so I encourage you, and I encourage me, let's paint some beautiful pictures. I know you're used to putting really ugly things up there sometimes. No need to do that anymore. They're not real anyway. And so paint beautiful pictures. That's how it is, right? And so it is. Thank you.